Ashes of the Last Dragon. Chapter 11. The Cursed Forest. Cole trudged along a narrow, overgrown path until it dissolved into patches of wild grass and tangled shrubs. The night still held firm over the landscape, but the horizon had begun to change, its deepest black now touched with a faint grey that hinted at the distant approach of morning. Hours had passed since he fled Ferrowell, and his limbs ached from fatigue and tension. Ahead, a looming wall of ancient trees rose against the sky like crooked teeth. Even in the low light, Cole saw the timber trunks distorted into twisted shapes. Thick branches interlocked overhead to form a canopy so dense it threatened to blot out any hope of daylight. He felt a chill skitter along his spine. There were enough stories and rumors about these woods to warn any sensible traveler away. Yet here he was, standing at the threshold of what many in Ferrowell whispered to be a cursed forest. Its sinister reputation clung to every branch and vine. Cole slowed, pressing a hand to the stitch in his side, and let his eyes drift over the tangled undergrowth. The first glimmers of his dark vision manifested in shimmering strands of midnight blue around tree trunks, revealing details he wouldn't have otherwise seen. Bark blackened in patches, heavy knots bulging like tumorous growths, and pale vines looping among skeletal underbrush. An unsettling hush pressed in, replacing the normal nighttime chorus of crickets or distant owls with a silence that crackled with tension.
"It's quiet,"
Cole muttered under his breath, peering past the gnarled roots. He realized he couldn't spot a single bird perched in the branches, nor hear any small creature rustling through the leaves. The gloom of the place felt absolute. A soft vibration brushed his thoughts.
"The land itself is corrupted here,"
the dragon's voice said, low and resonant. Cole paused, unsure if he dared speak out loud lest he attract unwanted attention. Instead, he gave a slight, involuntary nod. He couldn't pinpoint what corrupted truly meant, but the evidence lay all around him. Sagging shrubs with leaves ashen in color, thick vines twisted together like barbed wire, and a faint odor of decay that clung to the stagnant air. Stepping inside the forest was like crossing a threshold from one world into another. Almost immediately, the tangle of branches overhead choked off what little light remained. His dark vision intensified, painting every rock, twisted trunk, and patch of dead grass in swirling shades of blue-black. Columns of wood loomed on all sides, shapes coiling in the corners of his sight. He realized with a jolt just how vital this strange power had become. Without it, he would have been blindly stumbling into brambles and fallen logs. Cole gripped his father's hammer tighter at his hip. He tried to stay on the remnants of a path, any sign of a trail, but the forest floor was a maze of gnarled roots and scattered debris. At times, the undergrowth seemed to thicken deliberately, as though resisting his presence. When it snagged the edge of his cloak, he had to tug hard to free himself, each small movement feeling magnified in the hush. Every so often, his footstep would land with a crack on a dead branch, echoing ominously through the silent trees. The noise set his nerves on edge, reminding him of Lily's final moments and the emptiness her death had left. He caught himself wishing she was still at home, safe. But then, home no longer existed in the same way. He clenched his jaw to block the surge of grief. The forest's quiet threatened to drag every memory to the surface, but he couldn't let himself fall apart here. Time became hard to gauge under the dense canopy. It was still dark, but whether a few minutes or a full hour had passed since entering, he couldn't say. His legs felt leaden, protesting each step, yet he pressed on. Occasional hints of the dragon's presence stirred at the edges of his thoughts, guiding him around especially thick clusters of fallen timber, or pointing out a gap between twisted roots. Without that subtle nudge, he might have circled hopelessly in the same spot. He paused at a small clearing where the canopy opened just enough to reveal patches of sky, still dark with only the barest suggestion of approaching dawn. A shiver lanced through him as he noticed the rotting husk of a tree leaning drunkenly to one side. Beneath it, a mass of blackened vines lay coiled, and something glistened dully in the darkness, a sticky residue or slime. He didn't dare step closer to investigate. A sudden impression of being watched crept over him, the hairs at the back of his neck prickling. He glanced around, dark vision painting every stump and bush in inky contrasts. Nothing looked overtly alive, yet the feeling persisted. Each time he tried to focus, the shapes of the forest seemed to blur at the edges of his sight. His pulse quickened. He forced his mind to the path ahead, if it could be called a path at all. He had no map, no real idea of how large these woods were, only the certainty that Oaksford lay beyond. The memory of Lily's final breath latched onto him again, fueling his determination to keep moving. There would be answers somewhere past this cursed place, even if that meant pushing himself beyond all comfort. A muffled clack echoed behind him, like wood striking wood. Cole swung around, hammer half drawn, scanning the gloom. The forest stood still as ever, but cold dread seeped through his veins. His muscles tensed, anticipating movement that never came. He started forward again, trying to silence the pounding of his heart. The thick scent of decay clung to his nostrils, and his boots sank into layers of decomposing leaves. Now and then, he glimpsed faint scratches on tree trunks or twisted footprints in the mud, as though creatures with taloned feet had passed by. A sour taste filled his mouth, but he pressed onward, feeling every throb of exhaustion in his bones. Eventually, a series of distant, distorted howls resonated from deep within the forest. They were high-pitched, more like ragged shrieks than any common animal cry. Cole halted, breath held, ears straining. The howls floated through the silent canopy, and then subsided into echoing nothingness. His heart thumped so loudly that he half expected the dragon to command him to run. Instead, the dragon's voice slid into his mind, softer than before.
We must continue. If you stop, the darkness of this place will find you.
Cole bit his lip. That single phrase disturbed him more than anything else he'd heard. Raking a hand through his hair, he forced one step, then another. Each motion felt precarious, as though stepping too loudly would invite something dreadful out of the shadows. Even the trunk of a felled oak, covered in creeping vines, looked like a colossal carcass in the gloom. No matter how many times he blinked, the swirling blue-black outlines never lost their haunting clarity. The power that once seemed so foreign now served as his lifeline, guiding him through labyrinthine undergrowth. Sweat beaded at his temples despite the chill in the air, and a fleeting wave of nausea swelled in his stomach. The tension was relentless. Still, Cole found a morbid sort of comfort in that hush. Lily's memory haunted him, but trudging through the cursed forest left little room for him to wallow. Survival demanded his focus. He felt a pang in his chest as he thought of Lily's bright eyes and the way she used to tease him for being so serious. Pressing the sorrow down, he reminded himself, Lily's spirit was bound in the urn. He still carried her in some form, even if he hardly understood how. The howls drifted through the trees again, this time echoing off to his left. Cole's gaze cut in that direction, but he couldn't see any movement. All he observed were black trunks and withered shrubs splayed in nightmarish shapes. Determination solidified in his chest. He wouldn't turn back. He forged ahead, gripping his father's hammer so tightly that his knuckles burned. If anything lurked in the trees, he had to be ready. Dawn remained distant, no comforting light yet slicing through the canopy. Each step took him deeper into a world that felt forsaken by any spark of hope. But to stop was unthinkable. He refused to be paralyzed by fear. In that oppressive darkness, with the faint glimmer of sky concealed by branches, Cole pressed on. The forest offered no reassurance, only skeletal trees and a silence that threatened to devour his resolve. Yet he continued, every rattling breath and hammering heartbeat reminding him that he had lost Lily once. He would not lose himself too, no matter what horrors awaited in these cursed woods.